you look at Republicans and how much hay they make about the issue of immigration, and there's a lot of ways that you could actually address the issue of immigration. One is the way that seems to be the status quo in the last few years, which is to be sensational about it, be very alarmist and say we're going to shut down the borders no matter what. But actually, there's different strategies, right? One thing is that, I'm surprised that Republicans are often the party of limited government, right? That government is not good at doing a whole lot of good things. They're not good at regulating the economy, society, et cetera. And so it's actually quite striking that they haven't actually played that chord when it comes to immigration. If government isn't good at regulating the economy, what makes you think they're going to be good at regulating labor, right? I mean, labor is essentially nothing more than supply and demand, right? And so I think that kind of argument could be won over. I think it would be the kind of thing where you could sort of provide that kind of message and not turn off some Latino voters. I mean, because not all are going to be turned off by the issue of immigration and what the strident rhetoric is behind it, but some are. And so I think part of it is, I think that Republican strategists being a little bit more creative with what they have to work with. They don't have to reinvent themselves. They just have to sort of access certain principles that maybe just aren't in play the way they might be. If you look at them as Latinos largely in socioeconomic terms, right, they fit in one sort of segment. But if you look at them as far as certain values, right, they do tend to be religious. They do tend to be social conservatives by some measures, and yet they're not voting Republican. Right? So, and it's sort of the same thing with African Americans if you look at them, right? Socially conservative by many measures, some would say even more socially conservative than non-African Americans, and yet solidly democratic. I think, there's various explanations, but one of them is sort of the kind of message, whether it's direct or implicit, about how minorities are welcome into the party. Right now, a lot of the debate happens to be about getting tough on unauthorized immigration. The irony is that unauthorized immigration is only one part of the larger umbrella that we know as immigration. There's the question of legal immigration, actually. The big problem that's actually feeding into this flow of unauthorized immigrants is the fact that we don't have enough visas to go around in the first place. We've done that to ourselves, right? We put a cap on how many folks can come over. There's also refugee policy. What about that, right? There's a whole debate about whether there's actually enough skilled and low-skilled workers. Now, it's a lot easier to talk about high-skilled workers, right? People, I think, get a little jumpy in general about talking about low-skilled workers, but guess what? There's a lot of those jobs, and you actually look at news reports, employers can't actually fill them. Right? And it's not that Americans won't do them, it's that Americans won't do them at the job that the employers are asking, right? That's a market phenomenon. So some of this is, what aspect of immigration do we want to tackle? Because unauthorized immigration is important, it's a pressing issue, but that's not the only one, and it's actually quite related to the flow of legal migrants. So what you get is the incentive to go and sort of hang some red meat in front of those primary voters. And immigration is one of those issues, right? The question is, who's going to believe a shift from being very extreme to more moderate, just in the Republican Party in general, right? And then at the same time, among those potential Latino voters that might trend or lean Republican, are they going to believe such a shift? And it's kind of funny, right? Because you see a lot of candidates sort of being taken to task about being, quote unquote, soft on immigration. And it's a turnoff to your traditional sort of strident Republicans, but then you have to ask yourself, okay, if a candidate sort of flip-flops on this issue, is it also going to affect a potential Latino Republican voter? And the answer is probably.